show to be every single Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where sports meets life, on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/livenowdt, and listening worldwide on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as wakeupcalldt.com's homepage. So, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and bonus shows all the way through, and that is why you have to be on our social media, on Facebook at WakeUpCallDT, Twitter at CallDT, and Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT, because you never know when we're going live, and we just made the decision here. We knew we were doing a pregame show for Syracuse and Rutgers, but we literally just put this out. And I know that the Facebook and YouTube police are going, you just played 2 seconds of that, and we don't think you own it. So let me say right now, that was Rick Ross. Oh, and I do not own Rick Ross's music. So if you're mad at me for letting me play it, then I'm going to play it again. So we just let you know that we were going live here, and that is why you have to be with us on all the social medias, because you never know when Wake Up Call is going to have an impromptu show. It's like having a concert showing up at a random bar downtown, and you just don't know where we're going to be, and that's why you got to follow it. At Wake Up Call DT on Facebook, at Call DT on Twitter, and at Wake Up Call_DT on the Instagram. So, happy to be here with you inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. I'm with my guy, Isaac Alford, and I'm very excited that we did a postgame for the Syracuse road win 29-9 over Ohio. And now Syracuse will play what I said was like old Northeast rival, and Rob Carpenter, Rob Drummond, Duke Pettijohn reminded me that it's only a rivalry if it's not a game where you pad your stats.
Exactly.
And then Isaac told me the record overall, which is...
During their time they won 12 straight? So
12 straight.
I guess that's not much of a rivalry. And overall it was 30 to 12
it was
one.
Like, I think you said it was 32-10. No, it was 30. Yeah, it was 30-12-1.
Right.
Something like that. So Syracuse commanding. However, Syracuse has lost the last 2.
Right, exactly.
And now Greg Schiano's back. So it'll be interesting to see as Rutgers takes on Syracuse inside of the Dome. This is your pregame show inside of MomPopsPopcorn.com's What's Poppin'. Use the promo code in any one of the 50 states. We'll even allow it in New Jersey to the Rutgers fans. If you want to get your kettle corn, you can go to MomPopsPopcorn.com and use the promo code DT20. I'm just kidding, Rutgers fans. You're always welcome to have kettle corn. So we appreciate it. We thank you so much. And you know, I grew up thinking that Rutgers was a rival because on the basketball court, no matter what the record was, they could be 9-17 and they could still almost or beat Syracuse when Syracuse went to Rutgers.
Oh yeah, exactly. You just said the key word. Anytime they went to the rack, that was always a tough place to play. And I think even the year that we won the title in 2003, we went to the rack and lost to Rutgers. So
yeah.
You know, I guess, sometimes, like you say, you throw the records out of the window, and that's kind of what makes a rival a little bit. Records doesn't really matter. Those teams going to get together, and they both going to give it their all. And more times than not, Syracuse came out on top. So that's the most important thing. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we got a message coming in right away, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to get this message from William J. Pagan Jr., and I have to put this out. So I'm writing this out instantaneously. So Enrique A. Cruz Jr. is a true freshman offensive lineman on Syracuse's team. And I said to Enrique that he was looking at running for president. And I said, I'm looking at running for president. We both have Hispanic blood. So he said, you run, and then I'll run. So William J. Pagan, a family member of Enrique, said, Enrique says what's up, and when y'all getting this campaign together. So, Enrique, soon, have you seen the country? So,
it's about time. It's time for one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's time for some reggaeton to be played when we're walking into the White House. So, Enrique Cruz Jr., what is up, brother? I'm so excited and so happy to have you here in the 315. And for those of y'all that don't know Enrique A. Cruz Jr., you will get to know the offensive lineman over time here. And I am ecstatic about our relationship is great, and I'm ecstatic about him getting on the field, hopefully sometime soon, not because of injury, but because he earned the right.
Exactly. So. I was just getting ready to say that. He earned it.
Yeah. So definitely looking forward to that. Isaac Alford here with me, Dan Tortora. We're going to bring you through, so tell your friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, tell your TikTok fans, and apparently, because the site hasn't been shut down, tell your OnlyFans. but you can tell whoever you want to watch the show tonight, and of course, watch the playback. So we're here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Cubal studios. And awesome. So Enrique's family's going to be at the Dome tomorrow. Well, come say what's up. I'd love to be around y'all. And I think Enrique and I talked about it. His grandmother makes like the most banging rice ever. So, William, if Grandma brought the rice, bring it to the Dome. I don't care what you got to do to smuggle it in the Dome. I'll meet you in a tunnel underneath the Dome. If this was California, I could just meet you in the tunnel. But now I got to dig one. So, might take some time. We'll see. But yeah, no, if you guys are going to be there for sure, come say hello. And I love that. I love that the first message we get is from Enrique's family.
That's awesome. That's dope.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So just goes to show, there's a lot of beauty in doing what you love and loving what you do. So Isaac and I are here to talk about Rutgers at Syracuse, as well as Syracuse's football season and a lot of great stuff. Undoubtedly, we will interject our comedy, but we... How do I put... You know what? I'm not even going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I was going to go somewhere where I'm not going to go there. But we'll inject our comedy here. So what did William say? Next time we come out, she will come along. So if Grandma is with you, I need the rice. Because apparently whatever she puts in the rice, the rice is good.
Right.
So she could drop anything in the rice, and the rice is worth it.
You know you got a good cook when they can make the good rice and stuff like that.
You know you got a good cook when they can make rice timely.
Right.
Because you can mess rice up.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So easy to mess up rice. So rice, pasta, all that stuff, but not with Grandma. So showing our love to Grandma, we send you kisses, love, big old hug for Grandma. So if you have your grandparents, folks, I don't have to tell you this, but I will. If you got them here on this earth, hug them, kiss them, love them up, go see them, say hi to them. Don't waste a second. And when you think you've given them enough kisses and hugs, go do it again.
Exactly.
So what comes to mind, I mean, when you see the red R, I mean, it's like R comes before S and in the alphabet. But in the Dome... I think it's anything in the North. Like, I was born to, if it was UConn, if it was Rutgers, if it was Villanova, if it was Pittsburgh, if it was Georgetown, St. John's. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what their record was. You didn't like them. So I was born to think that Rutgers was a bad thing.
Right.
It was almost, you know what I mean? So when you see the red R, what do you think of?
Actually, to be honest with you, that was one of my first games I ever went to was a Syracuse football game.
Oh, really?
I think it was 2005. A great game, too. It was one of those Walter Reyes was the running back. It was one of those back-and-forth games where Syracuse took a lead. They went down.
Yeah. And
then half the fans left. And lo and behold, Syracuse came back and won that game before it was over.
You were at a game where the fans left?
I was at a game. Can you believe it? The fans left.
In the third quarter with 10 minutes left?
Exactly. And missed a great comeback. I'll never forget that. But definitely, I mean, it was just one of those programs where, like the guys told you earlier, it wasn't really a rivalry to them. But yet, those programs expired to be what Syracuse was at that time.
Yeah.
Get that? So... Definitely, I mean,
you just got to.
It was just one of those programs where
you take care of business.
like the guys told you earlier, nothing gives me more satisfaction than beating a close team like that, because it's going to be all bragging rights. Tom even talked about that. He's from Jersey, so he's got high school teammates that party playing on Rutgers, so he definitely want to be one up when they go back home and talk, old war stories and stuff like that.
Well, that's the thing is arguably everybody that knows Tommy DeVito from New Jersey, whether they go there or not, whoever wins, they're going to be talking trash at somebody.
Exactly.
So, and that's, I mean, there's other guys, Davon Ellison and guys, through history that have come from this area. So this is huge. And when Bobby Acosta was here on Schaefer's staff, a big thing for him was winning the recruiting battle in New Jersey over everybody else.
Right.
Beating Rutgers, beating Pitt, beating UConn, beating, BC in the New Jersey area and really building that, connected corridor between New York and New Jersey. That was imperative to him. And, and I miss Bobby because of that.
Yeah.
So
he definitely was dedicated to that. I remember reading stories on him and stuff.
Still he talks about it.
He'd love to see that Syracuse flag flying in Jersey, you know what I'm saying? So, you definitely got to take care of business on that one.
Yeah, so I think, for him that was so big, so huge that was something that they did and they did consistently. And so, I think that people need to remember, even though this isn't the Big East anymore, and even though the rivalry heavily leans on Syracuse's side, still, it doesn't matter 30-12-1. Syracuse lost the last two.
Right.
So, yes, historically, yes, they've had runs like the 12 games in a row, like you said. Yes, overall it's there, but now it's the bad taste in your mouth, and it's the next opponent in front of you. So with all due respect, whether it's, Abilene Christian, Rutgers, Alabama, whoever it is, you want to beat this team, and Syracuse needs to know in the background, and the coaching staff needs to know in the background, whoever wins this game gets to say, oh, they're recruiting you? Well, you know what? Bill, can you pull up the film? Why don't you watch what we did to them last year? Schiano is going to use this against Syracuse, and Babers is going to use this against Rutgers if they're smart. Whoever wins uses this in recruiting. Mm-hmm. This is a recruiting tool game of the Northeast.
Yeah, and no matter what the coaches say, if they downplay it, they'll be lying. It's definitely a recruiting tool. And there's great athletes in that part of the state. A lot of, like you said, a lot of famous players that went to Syracuse come from that area. So definitely, why wouldn't you want to have the leg up in that battle?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, when push comes to shove, we have to actually see this, come to fruition for one of these teams is going to use it to their advantage. Some fans are nervous that, I don't want to say fans are nervous, but some people are sitting here saying, well, Rutgers went off against Temple 61-14. What do you think about that, Dan? And, I think that Schiano's got them feeling good.
Yeah.
I think Schiano's got them. They have nothing to lose. And, remember, this is a team that lives in the basement of the Big Ten. So their non-conference schedule, you might look at this, say 61-14, but then they might turn around in the Big Ten and win one or two games.
Right. I mean, but you know what? You definitely got to take care of business in the non-conference for those guys.
Yeah.
But, I'd still give them a little bit of respect because those guys they play in the Big Ten, and you definitely got to have the athletes to go through that meat grinder of a conference. So those guys are not timid or nothing. So they're going to come in here ready to play. So it is a good test for Syracuse, and that's why I'm curious to see how they follow up last week's game with, can the running game still produce the way it did last week? And, maybe open up the offense a little bit more, and let's see what the passing game gets with this team. But because Rutgers they do have athletes on their side of the ball. There's no denying it. But again, like you say, the winner of this game gets to go to 2-0, part of ACC. You can't afford to give away games when you got a chance to pad your record and, again, build some confidence on the team and move forward. And then, who knows what may happen later in the conference and stuff play. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you got to win these games in front of you, and Syracuse knows how difficult, like you said, the ACC is going to be. So you really have no choice but to, I said that this year, looking at the non-conference schedule, it was like Syracuse has to go 3-1 or 4-0 in non-conference, and then you put yourself in a situation where you only have to win 2 of your 8 ACC games to become bowl eligible.
Exactly.
And none of those games are going to be easy. People think, oh, Clemson this and that, whatever, because they lost. That was a high defensive game for both teams. Clemson, their quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, I believe he was going to have a couple games. Uiagalelei.
Oh, okay.
Just call him DJ. But he's in, I thought coming into this year, because he only played 2 games last year when Trevor was out with the COVID protocol, that, he was going to struggle and that maybe there would be like 3 games where they would push him.
Right.
But I didn't necessarily think that they would lose. Definitely not the first game of the season. So they're playing on their heels right now. People need to understand something. That could be really good for Syracuse, that the running game struggled. And, granted, it was against Georgia, but that the running game struggled for Clemson, that Georgia was able to get to the quarterback, to get to DJ, that the offense sputtered, and that they really can't lose. So, in a way, if DJ gets rattled at all, which I'm not saying he will, but if he has nerves at all in this, and you come into the Dome, and the loud house is loud, and hey, we have 1 loss, we can't lose another game and get into the college football playoff.
Right.
So, they're, with all intents and purposes, for the next 11 games of the regular season, playing in a situation where they have to win.
Oh, yeah, this definitely is. One more loss will seal the deal for those guys. And, they're capable of running the table. I mean, again, that Georgia defense is a powerhouse. I mean, and both teams play well on defenses. So, I mean, it's not to say that Clemson just struggled. Both Georgia, they struggled also. So, I mean, that tells you something there. Hell, everybody has to go against that defense. So,
yeah,
and that's their strength, and they'll be all right. So, but yeah, definitely Syracuse definitely has to take care of, like you say, no worse 3-1 coming out of non-conference play. 4-0 will be fantastic, great, a great buzz. Especially you going into Florida State, going into conference in Florida State. They lost to Notre Dame, but that still looked like a pretty good team too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, when we look back at some of these games from week 1. Some of the matchups, the Notre Dame Florida State game in Tallahassee, you see Mike Norvell in this, coaching in his second season, and I jokingly said, well, at least they got the game off of Notre Dame, because last year it seemed like Florida State was sick right before the game.
Exactly.
Oh, Clemson's in town? Yeah. Just have them get a cup of coffee if they... oh, wait, we should get tested.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of games that got mysteriously canceled last year.
Right.
One of them being the Clemson game when Dabo and the team were already there.
Right.
So to see them go up against Notre Dame, and I'm not poking fun at COVID, I'm poking fun at the fact that it looked like they seemingly were just canceling out their season, and they got to a point where I thought, I don't think they're going to play another game.
Right.
Like, they were, getting into December, and, December 19th we'll play Duke. And so, Florida State did not really have to play that many games.
Right.
And in this one, they come in, and they have Jordan Travis, and Mackenzie Milton comes over after 2 years of not playing due to an injury that almost took his leg when he was at UCF. I covered him there. Now he's over at Florida State. And Jordan Travis's helmet comes flying off. Mackenzie comes in, leads a scoring drive, and remains out there, which, is really interesting when they say you're only a play away. And I said, was the trainer that accidentally jabbed Tyrod Taylor? I was like, was he in the stands, and when you see the helmet come off, did he precisely just shoot a rock and it popped the helmet off? And he's like, 2 for 2.
Exactly.
Because the way that people said, his helmet comes off, Mackenzie's in, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Jordan Travis, see you later.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a little weird. I was surprised he didn't go back in that game. But I guess they try to ride the hot hand right there. But,
Yeah.
But they created a little bit of controversy now for them, so we'll see. But both of those guys are great quarterbacks, so it'll be interesting to see how they finish out the season.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make it interesting as we take a look at this moving forward here. But if we look back at week 1, the ACC, half of the ACC won, half of the ACC lost.
All the ranked teams that lost.
Yep, all the ranked teams lost. Clemson lost to Georgia, ranked versus ranked. Alabama defeated Miami. And North Carolina lost to unranked Virginia Tech. North Carolina fell the farthest in the rankings. They fell 14 spots from 10 to 24. And Virginia Tech came in at number 19. What do you think about Justin Fuente, where it seemed like the AD had to, tell the fans why he wasn't firing Justin Fuente,
Right.
and then Justin Fuente comes out and beats Mac Brown.
Yeah, I mean, that made a statement, too. I mean, sometimes you never know what's going to happen. Like they say, anybody can beat anybody on a given night. And, especially in Blacksburg, you come out there and that crowd was rocking, and it was pumped to see that game. And, but fall 14, I didn't realize that. That's
14 spots.
Sometimes, it sucks to be, certain teams, because some teams get a bump in the road and they fall maybe 2 or 3 slots, but 14, that's pretty hard.
Oh, Alabama lost? We'll drop them from 1 to
2.
1.5. We'll keep them at 1.5. Yeah. I mean, and you do. I mean, you see, well, there was one situation in the rankings that I thought was really interesting where a team jumped into the grave of the other team. And what I'm talking about there is LSU and UCLA. So UCLA defeats LSU at home on the West Coast. LSU is ranked 16th in the nation. UCLA wasn't ranked. When UCLA beat LSU, they dropped LSU from the rankings and put UCLA in their 16th spot. they literally just flipped them. And I don't know how you do that from not even in the top 25 to 16.
Right.
But they legitimately just said, hey, you beat them, you take their spot.
Yeah.
You eat their lunch, basically.
Maybe we should do that with our rankings all the time. That make it easier. Earn what you get.
So like when Syracuse beat Clemson and they were 2 in the country, like, all right, you're 2 in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's where you stand now. But it was a very interesting look at it. I mean, if we look at it right now, Alabama didn't move. Georgia goes up 3. Ohio State goes up. Oklahoma goes down 2 spots after almost losing to Tulane at home, 40-35. Texas A&M moved up a spot. Clemson fell down 3. Cincinnati went up 1. They're in 7th. And I guess they were preparing to put them in the Big 12 because they never give the AAC that much respect. And then Notre Dame's at 8 after beating Florida State, who wasn't ranked. And then we look at Iowa State goes down 2 spots after winning. Iowa's right behind them, goes up. Iowa goes up 8 spots, and Penn State goes up 8 spots. Back-to-back, Iowa 10 in the AP, and was 19 the week before, and then from 19 in the AP to 11 is Penn State. We saw Iowa beat Indiana, and Indiana was ranked 17th at the time in the country. But just interesting here, we know that the Associated Press and the coaches poll loves themselves from Big Ten because they were ranking them 3 weeks before they played a game last year. And they were moving Michigan up 3 spots at 0-0, which I thought was fantastic because then in that case, Isaac and I should also be in the top 10. So, but to see that, Iowa goes up 8 spots after beating Indiana, who was 17th in the country. Penn State goes up 8 spots after beating Wisconsin at 12. Agree or disagree that these teams should have shot up almost 10 spots?
Yeah, I disagree with that. But, I mean, they did beat the teams ahead of them, but, I don't know if it was that big of a jump. Both of them were some competitive games, but definitely I didn't see that big of a jump. I mean, what happened in between those guys, to facilitate that amount of a jump, from, 10 spots.
Yeah, and leapfrogging a team like Florida that stayed put at 13 after they defeated FAU 35-14. And then we see Texas go up 6 spots as they won their game.
Who did Coastal beat?
And Coastal Carolina went up
5.
They went up 5 spots in the polls, and Coastal Carolina defeated Citadel 52-14. So apparently they were treated like Clemson. Apparently, the AP and
we love some Coastal.
Well, that's the thing is the AP and the coaches poll just wants to screw the Americans so bad that they're like, oh, you got UCF in Houston and Cincinnati, but Coastal Carolina and the Sun Belt, they're like, let's move them up, because the AAC doesn't get that much love, but Wisconsin went down 6, and then Virginia Tech and Ole Miss weren't rated, and they came in. Utah went up 3. Miami went down 8. Arizona State went up 2. North Carolina went down 14, and Auburn came in at 25. So I guess with Coastal Carolina, it was like, hey, you won, and a bunch of these teams lost. So it made sense to shift them up. But with all due respect, Cincinnati at 7 and Coastal Carolina at 17 is typically not what they're used to seeing. And in the coaches poll, Cincinnati at 8 instead of 7, and Coastal Carolina is at 19 instead of 17, but both in the top 20, one in the top 10. I don't know what's going on with the committee. I guess they're trying to give the American a gimme. They must have gotten that little note that was folded and sent to them in class, like, they're going to be a Big 12 team. Let's make sure we take care of them.
Exactly.
Because normally they don't give the American that much love.
Right.
Or the Sun Belts.
Right.
It's at crazy. All.
Yeah, I just don't get how those teams either go up that far, but maybe there's some special reason they know in the future that's going to happen. But I know Coastal was a darling of last year, so
yeah, yeah, them and Liberty playing that game last year was fantastic. I was like, can they both win?
Right.
You know what I mean? I wanted to see them both win. So just because of the fact of where they were now, William said Norvell froze his kicker. He was watching the game. So about the fact that at the end Florida State had a shot to win, and it didn't end up coming to fruition. So, again with Notre Dame, you go to Florida State, who's been down the last few years, and you barely beat them in overtime.
Right.
And then last year, you're at home in South Bend, in Notre Dame, playing DJ Uiagalelei in his second ever collegiate game, and you beat him after taking 2 overtimes at home.
Right.
So what's Notre Dame and Brian Kelly really showing you if it takes them 2 overtimes at home to beat a backup quarterback, and then they barely beat Florida State when Jacksonville State almost beat Florida State in Tallahassee last year?
Yeah, I mean, but you know what? Those teams do rise up when you see that golden helmet to play. I mean, it's a given, you know. But it does.
Even Greg Robinson rose up to play Notre Dame.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no! Did I say the boogeyman's
name? Exactly.
Uh-oh. Wait, hold on. That new movie's out, Candyman. Don't say it again. So, but yeah, I mean that's the no word in Syracuse.
Yes.
But just not to make you all feel bad, but one coach went 1-10 that you guys can't utter again, which is Greg Robinson, and the only other coach to also go 1-10 is your current coach, Dino Babers.
Yeah.
So if y'all don't like 1-10, it's happened twice now.
Duly noted.
It's happened twice. So I got asked by the former Syracuse players, Isaac, and I don't want to be here alone since we're both going to be in the Dome together.
Oh, thanks.
So Rob Carpenter, Rob Drummond, and Duke Pettijohn, Syracuse football alumni, Rob asked me, and they all sat and watched, what grade I would give Dino in his seasons up, 5 seasons and change at Syracuse. I said C-.
D+. How about that?
There you go.
D+.
Yeah.
If you're going to give his overall record, 1 winning season so far. He still needs some more. I mean, I like Dino. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a hell of a coach, but you definitely got to. You got to string some seasons together before to get off that hot seat, because anything more like last year, you're definitely going to be looking for another house somewhere else. So
yeah, well, and the thing is that I think 2 years in, when he was 4-8 and 4-8,
right?
I think he was still could have been a quote unquote Power 5 head coach, and then 10-3 could have been a Power 5 head coach, but then. Staying in year 4 and 5, I think now if he wants to be in the Power 5, he's going to have to be a coordinator.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think he can go be a head coach. I think he could be a head coach in Appalachian State. I think he could be, and I'm not trying to disrespect them, I think he could be a head coach at maybe Coastal Carolina.
Yeah.
I think he could be a head coach at UConn or Tulane, but, And that's not, because I love Tulane, and people know that I know these coaches. I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm just saying if he thought he was getting the Oregon job or the UCLA job or the Baylor job, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
If he didn't strike when the iron was hot, now it's a little too late there. So yeah.
Yeah. The iron, we keep checking it for trying to figure out if it's plugged in. So that's where we're at right now. But here with Isaac Alford, we're inside the Cafe Kubal Studios wake-up call with Dan Tortora. Rutgers at Syracuse pregame show, getting you ready for Syracuse's first home game. Been almost 2 years since the fans have been in the stands. And last time they were there was November of 2019. And last year, the media, the Syracuse staff, the opposing team, and the Syracuse team were the only people in the building, and the groundskeepers. No concession people, no fans. There was legitimately 20 media, maybe. And so the experience of the Dome reopening in September of I said the Dome has only opened twice, December 1980 and September 2020. Being a part of that, it was strange. It was silent. It felt like the fourth quarter, fans. And I'm happy that they're coming back.
Right.
My thing is, when we go into the Dome for this Rutgers game, I understand people are nervous about COVID and this and that, so I understand that there's other reason, whatever. But I want to see at least 30,000 people in a 50,000 seat stadium.
Right. Yeah, that would be a decent number given the environment we're in right now. Definitely.
Because there are no restrictions right now.
Right.
There's no restriction. Yeah, now you have to show your vaccine card,
right,
or you have to get a test, or whatever. But there's no, and not to interrupt.
No, I get you. Yeah.
There's no because I asked yesterday to the Syracuse staff. There are no restrictions on numbers, so they can cap out and fill the whole place if they wanted to. Just so you know, they can do that. So it's not that the fans have to be 6 feet apart. It's not that they can only sell 20,000 seats. It's wide open.
Right. And it'd be nice to even get 40 in there, So, and it's a special place when it's packed, if it ain't even capacity, if you get a 42 to 45, it's awesome. There's no bad seat in the house. That's what I love about the Dome.
Yeah.
So, definitely hope, the crowd and the fans, the students, everybody come out tomorrow and cheer the team on.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the same without you.
Yeah.
And I did a bunch of videos from inside of the Dome, and the few times you get the court with the field. So I want to take advantage of it. And I took some video there outside of the Dome, inside of the Dome, and just said that, it's time to finally welcome you home.
Mm-hmm.
We've missed the fans. I've missed the fans. I felt that it was on my shoulders to show you the Dome, to bring you through the Dome. I shot a video after every single game. It's going to be different now because I would come off of the court and I'd walk up to one of the sections, the 100 sections, and I'd shoot my post-game video. And so now, knowing that there's people that will be sitting there and be interesting and whatnot to, just going up there before, it was just kind of like an open TV set for me.
Right.
But definitely felt it on my shoulders to tell the story. Isaac and I definitely, whether you're there or not, are going to tell you the story. And so it'll be nice to have you home. It'll be nice to have you back. And, this is my hometown. This is where I grew up. I grew up on the north side, about 10 minutes from the Dome. So this is what I know. This is what I came to as a kid. And to be able to share a year with you when you're away from the Dome meant the world to me. I hope you continue to share it with me and with Isaac and I. And when you come back, that you'll continue to watch and listen, even though you'll be back there for some of you. And I just hope that people appreciate it and don't take it for granted. And if anything, if the talent on the field and the game itself didn't make you stay and you were frustrated, I just hope that, I want to live in a world where fans stayed at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And because, let's be real, folks, how much traffic are you going to wait in Syracuse? So I've always wanted people to stay to the end. And I feel like back in the day that they would. And so it would mean the world to me, win, lose, or draw, if, at the very least, COVID taught the fans to value every second and to not leave with 10 minutes left in the third quarter because you don't know if you'll ever be able to come back.
Yeah, definitely. That's even special to the players, too. And I like those venues where, like you say, the fans stick around, no matter if they're team up or down. You're there to celebrate with the student athletes out there on the field, giving their all because, again, that's what they are, student athletes, and they put their bodies on the line week in and week out, for the community. And I'm pretty sure they appreciate the community. Anybody that comes out to the venue, they appreciate every person that comes out. And definitely come out there and cheer them on because I'm excited to get back in the Dome. Because it's been a while, like you said, even for myself, to be in there. And just to see the work that they put into the place, it is a special venue now.
Yeah, and seeing this and seeing, the fact that, and it is, the pictures, and I'll be sharing stuff as we get set for the game, but looking at the new video boards and the new sound system and how they can light up the Dome almost like if the sun's not out, they can make it look like it is. They can change the lights. They can do so many really cool things, and I love it. So, I really think it's beautiful. It's awesome. We're spoiled, and I think the fans should definitely come out and spend some time here and have some fun with it. So definitely come to the Dome if you feel safe enough to do so. And enjoy the time, make the most of it. And don't take it for granted ever again. Because whether it's a peewee game, a high school game, a college game, a pro game, whatever it may be, I think we really just need to be in a place where, you appreciate just doing this.
Right.
There was a time where Isaac wasn't supposed to come to my studio and sit in with me because, we had to stay in our own homes and everybody had to be separated. So, I think for me, the biggest thing is that nothing can substitute real, tangible experiences with people.
So. Yeah, and I enjoy watching that fan interaction. That's one of the things I soak up when I'm driving to the Dome. Roll my windows down as I'm riding down the university, and just watching fans interact, tailgating. That's stuff that was taken away from everybody. So now to have that back, and like you say, don't take it for granted. And maybe in some ways, some families can start new traditions and stuff like that. So definitely soak it in and realize, hey, just appreciate football's back, and we're back to being able to see it in person. So.
Yeah, and back seeing these two teams go up against each other from the old Big East. Largest margin of victory was by Syracuse when they won 70-14. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't against Pittsburgh. It would have been 70-67. So 70-14, largest margin of victory for Rutgers in the head-to-head series with Syracuse is 38-7. Longest win streak was 4 games for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights from 2005 to 2008. And then you mentioned the longest win streak, 12 games, 1987 to 1998, which encompassed Rob Drummond, Rob Carpenter, and Duke Pettijohn that I spoke with. It encompassed, their time there. So the 12-game winning streak definitely is something that they enjoyed that started in the undefeated Syracuse season of 1987.
Yeah, so that's, 3 classes that didn't lose that game. So, I mean, that's some special stuff. That's almost like Navy and Army. You know what I'm saying? Navy had 4 classes that went through that beat Army, so almost like a 16 games.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was almost 20 games.
Right.
And then Army finally got one.
Right.
And now Army's been
back to back, I believe.
Yeah, they've been putting themselves in good footing right now.
Right. But definitely, yeah, you see what the history shows, what these two teams have been about. So, and they have 2 teams in the Northeast playing each other. On the anniversary of 9/11. That speaks to itself too. So definitely, come out and support the team, community, and show your support for the nation.
And you have, obviously a close relationship in the military world. When we think of 9/11, what do you what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of that day, when you hear September 11th?
When I think back on it, I kind of remember, after the events happened. I mean, I know it took everybody to shock when we saw on the TV live as the planes striking the towers. But I just remember the eerie feeling of we were released to go home to be with your loved ones and stuff. But I just remember that day of walking down the sidewalk, and it just felt like I was in another world. Just body was numb. I couldn't imagine what had just happened, and it just took, in that whole night, I just couldn't leave the TV, watching the whole coverage of what happened and stuff. But the day you'll probably never forget. You always hear these stories about history, Pearl Harbor, and all these other things, but just to live through something like that, it's definitely, I will never forget that, and just to think it was 20 years ago, man, it's unreal.
20 years ago. I mean, I remember I was a junior in high school, and I remember walking. I remember so much of that day. Mm. I remember walking up the stairs at my high school, and I remember I came around, and there was nobody in the hallway, mm-hmm. and I was walking by myself, and it kind of hit me this is real. It hit me. And I remember, so I was in, and this is ironic, I was in history class and geography and whatnot. And so we're in class with Mr. Sacco. We know nothing. And we go out, and there's kids coming into the classroom, and everybody's in the hallway, and our hallways were always crazy jam-packed and whatever. And one of the people was the towers have been hit. I'm what are you talking about? And the towers have been hit, and nobody knew. So we thought this has got to be a joke because nobody in our classroom mm-hmm. knew anything. And so I went down to religion class, and I said to my religion teacher, "Let me put the TV on," because they said the towers have been hit. And she said no. And I said, "Let me put the TV on." And she's like, "No, I don't want the TV on." And then after a while, there's people coming by, and I think somebody stood and the doorway, and then I don't know. I guess it hit her that like she heard like other people said it, and she just like believed it. And she looked at me at one point like a ghost, and she goes, "Turn the TV on if you can." And so I went and I plugged it in, and I plugged in the cable part of it, and I turned the TV on, and I turned the TV on like 2 minutes before the second tower fell. Because the second one fell before the first.
Right.
And so I turn it on, and we're watching this, and I just remember in my head, like, getting amped up like a movie, thinking, like, oh, yeah, like, I was, you know, like, you get, like, the climax of a movie, and I'm thinking, oh, like, Harrison Ford's going to show up.
Right.
And you see this thing fall, and then, you know, the plane had just gone into the other building, and we're sitting there watching this thing. I don't even think we did anything with it. I think she eventually let us go. And we're just sitting there in class, and then I remember I came home, and my dad came home early, and he came through the back door, so he was on the back porch, and my mom was in the kitchen, and I was doing my homework, and I remember I looked at my mom, and I go, this is stupid. I go, how am I supposed to do social studies homework? Like, how am I supposed to do my history homework when history is happening, right? Like, we're living it.
Right.
Like, how am I supposed to be doing homework when we're living history? And I looked, and my dad was at the back door, and my mom goes, let him in. And he looked at me, and I opened the door, and he just looked at me, and he grabbed me, and he squeezed me so tight I thought he was going to break my bones. And, you know, he just said in that moment that, like, he didn't know the next thing that was going to happen.
Right.
And so it was that feeling of, like, I don't know if I could protect my son. And so, I remember, I remember, like, where I walked, what I did, that teacher that wouldn't let me turn it on, then she did, the first time we found out, seeing the tower fall, like, and then just the way that my dad hugged me.
Yeah, and I remember, because I lived near the airport, and it was that, so after that happened, you know, they ground every flight, so it was kind of eerie just driving along the highway, and you not seeing a plane, and that happened, you know, that was for like a couple of days, too, after that fact, but, you know, it definitely, and like you said, when the towers fell, that was the one thing I was saying in my mind. I was like, please stay up. And when you realized they were falling, it's like, it just was a sinking feeling in my stomach when you saw that. I had a coworker that was with me. She was from New York City, and she just immediately bust out in tears because she had family members that worked in the towers. I think they were okay, but at the time, you don't know. So
nobody knew anything.
Right. You just see the images on TV, and yeah, it was just a day that just I won't ever forget, and the feeling was just like you was out of your body, you know. It's just like, this is not, can't be happening, you know. So, because when it first happened, and like you said, we turned the TVs on, the first towers was already been struck, so nobody knew what happened. We were just saying, okay, maybe a plane accidentally hit it.
Yeah, you're looking at like the TV's, it's just on fire, and you're
right, and
watching
then you see the image of the other plane coming across, and you're like, no, this is real. So, yeah, definitely, you know, very sad.
You know, and when you think about it, 20 years ago, I mean, what's the emotion? Like, what comes to you first?
I think sadness, because you know all those people that lost their families. I even, you know, during that time, I would take trips down to New York City, and I had opportunity to go to Ground Zero. I didn't really get that close, but you know, just to see the site in person, and all the photos and stuff of people, you know, on the walls that the family members posted and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, yeah, just sadness of the loss for family members was the one big thing that always come to mind for me.
Yeah, I think, you know, I remember Allison Berry that went to school with me. Her uncle died. He was a firefighter that was there. And I remember my dad was the office, because his boss is in New York City. My dad was supposed to be there 8 days later. And the building where my dad was supposed to go to, literally his boss's windows were overlooking the rubble that they were sifting through. Like, my dad would have been right there.
Right.
And 8 days later, he went down. Like, he went down to his meeting. And I remember my parents brought me, and the netting that they had up against the buildings because they weren't sure if, for a long time, if they were going to fall.
Didn't know. Yeah, because a lot of buildings in that area had cracks in them and stuff. You could see the foundations and stuff that from that impact of the fall of the towers that it created around it. So yeah. Just seeing it, firsthand is just that was just real emotional.
Yeah, and I think here we are 20 years later, and we're in a place now where we thought in September 11th of 2001, oh my God, this could never happen to us. This is what happens in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And now 20 years later, oh my God, a pandemic couldn't happen to us. Pandemics aren't going to happen. And even if they did, we're America, we're strong.
Right.
And here it has happened to us. But 20 years later, going through yet another thing that we never thought would happen, we said we would never forget, and we have, some of us. And we were so united. United we stand is what was on everything. And we will never forget, united we stand after 9/11. That's what you kept seeing. 20 years later, we're divided.
Yeah.
20 years later, we have been taught to hate each other. And not that wasn't taught before, but it's sad to me to say 3,000 people lost their lives 20 years ago, and we said we would never forget, and how have some of us forgotten?
Yeah, and you said exactly what I was thinking too. I mean, the country was united at that point, and it was just a different feeling after that moment. And how we got here, I mean, I don't know. It's just, I can't imagine how, but, and you hate that it takes tragedy to be united like that, but, it speaks for itself, how, life goes on, but then, like you say, people go back their own corners and things get twisted in certain ways. So, but yeah.
And that's what I said going through this pandemic is the extra time that you've had to spend with your family, to make phone calls, to FaceTime, to, when someone says, I'm not a phone person, and it's like, well, that's all you had. So for people now to go back into somewhat of a normal life, I said our challenge now is going to be that when we did all these healthy things, when we started taking walks, when we started eating better, when we called our grandma more, when we played board games, when we, squashed beefs and put the weapons away and had, hugs instead of closed fists.
Mm-hmm.
Can we stay that way?
Right.
I think the thing is that it was sad that we weren't that way, but now it's when things go back to normal, can you keep what you learned?
Right.
It's like healthy mind, healthy body. So now that my schedule is busy and games are going on and this and that, and we can go here, there, and everywhere, am I going to continue to walk? Yes. Am I going to continue to take care of my mental health and my, emotional and physical health? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the things that we've hopefully learned in the last 18 months, now the challenge is not the pandemic. The challenge is if we will take the things that we were doing and saying at a time where we maybe had no other choice, and now that you have a choice, are you going to choose health and wellness when you have the choice to go back to bad habits?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the challenge for everybody, if you develop some good habits in there, this is the time to try to stick to it and not, again, like you say, forget, and go back to old bad habits and whatnot. But, that's kind of human nature in a way, we all, you adjust and adapt to some situations, but, if we could take the good things out of this and keep moving forward, that'll be a great way to continue to live.
Well, as we say sometimes, as we've said in the past, Syracuse plays up to the team that they're playing against.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've played up to the pandemic, then stay up when that hopefully goes away. If you're going to play up for Clemson, don't play down for Liberty.
Right. And I think having a 1-10 season kind of also give these guys an extra motivation because they know what it was like to go through that season. And if that, it's sad to say it took that for some of them to take it serious because you probably can say they came out of that 10-3 season for some people that's still on the team thinking that was a given.
Yeah.
that, hey, this is what we are now. But,
Oh, they said, the guys told me there were guys on the team that were feeling themselves and they were cocky and they
Right.
bought their own hype.
Right.
They
right.
thought like, oh, we're fine now. We did it. Like you did it one time.
Right.
So.
And people don't forget. So the following year is like, no, you just got to prove yourself year in and year out. So,
yeah.
Hopefully those guys took last year as the motivating factor, and they're going to keep pushing forward and do great things this year. And I'm looking forward to them doing that too.
Well, and the thing is like you had the bad taste in your mouth so much that it's not like you ate it once.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you ate the shake with the old almond milk like I did. It's like you ate that 8 weeks in a row.
Right.
I mean, listen, they ended the season on an 8-game losing streak.
Right.
So it's not even that they went 1-10. They didn't see a win for the last couple months of the season. And so you have to, are we going to have a season? Okay, we're going to have a season, and then this is the season we had. That's the thing that's got to kill you inside, just make you feel like, okay, we were one of the few teams that got to have a season where they didn't have to cancel or postpone any games.
Exactly.
They played their entire schedule, and they just didn't do what they needed to do.
Right.
And the Alabamas look like the Alabamas, and Clemson for the most part look like Clemson, and teams look good. And Syracuse, the teams that usually look good, and Syracuse just got lost in the shuffle, and I can't imagine that anybody wants to lose again, because I think a 1-10 season probably makes you feel like you had a tidal wave hit you about 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's every week, but this week I gave my game ball, quote unquote, my what I call the top dog of the week, proudly presented by K9 Camp Dog Daycare and K9 Campground Dog Boarding of East Syracuse. I gave the top dog of the week to the entire offensive line.
Yes.
They allowed 1 sack. Now, granted, the last 2 years, at some point in 2019 and 2020, Syracuse's offensive line was the worst offensive line. Syracuse's offensive line contributed to Syracuse being the worst team in the country in sacks allowed for 2 years in a row. The non-COVID year, then the COVID year, and then they start this season only allowing 1 sack and helping their rushing attack to 6.4 yards a carry, 283 yards, and almost 50 rushing attempts.
Right. And that's the unit I really want to see, get their mojo back, if you want to say that.
Yeah.
Because we all hear the coaches say it's one in the trenches. So
yeah.
I think if those guys, the line can stay healthy, because that was a big factor last year, them barely having 5 out there that could play and continue the whole season. Somehow they made it. Like you said, they didn't even cancel a game for some reason, and going through what they went through. So hopefully they come out stronger on the other side of it, But definitely the offensive line, that is a good pick on that one. They did what they had to do last week. Now let's see them sustain it and go through this Rutgers game and be physical, push people around, and let Big Tuck get some yards there.
Just like any relationship, you hope to see positive habits, but consistent positive habits are the only ones that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, he stopped cheating on Tuesdays. So, what I mean? So, but the rest of the week, he lied. But, shout out to left tackle Matt Bergeron, left guard Chris Bleich, center Carlos Vettorello, right guard Darius Tisdale, and right tackle Aaron Service, as well as everybody that was a part of that. So big ups to the offensive line. My top dogs of the week this week brought to you by K9 Camp Dog Daycare and K9 Campground Dog Boarding. For your dog's short and long-term care, you can bring them to East Syracuse. The campground is 315-299-4013 for an appointment, and daycare for your K9 is 315-437-7110. So make sure you check those out in East Syracuse, right off of Bridge Street. Before we hop out of here, taking a look at Rutgers' game last week, where fans have a little bit of nervousness here. Rutgers just got after it. I said it was interesting, the bookend game that they had. Mm-hmm. They scored the first 5. They had the first 5 scores, and then Temple scored in the first half. And in the second half, Temple had the first score, and they had the last 5. So they were literally the opposite of themselves.
Right.
5-1, 1-5. They scored 10 times in this game, and first one was a safety. So kind of an interesting nugget. Them and Syracuse had a safety in week 1.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of cool. And then you see field goal touchdown, and then 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. And then they had 5 touchdowns to end the game in the second half, 2 in the third, 3 in the fourth, and their defense shut down Temple to 14 points and held Temple scoreless all the way until the 9:15 mark of the second quarter. They had held Temple scoreless 26-0 until the 9:15 mark right before halftime.
Yeah, and they took advantage with those 5 turnovers also. So that's what, again, a Syracuse team has to do: stay clean, win the turnover battle. Because if you give a team like that those many times, the chances of blitz and try all those defensive tactics to take the ball away, and they always come with a great special teams. That they are known for blocking punts or field goals. So definitely keep those 2 phases of the game, special teams. They did a heck of a job last week, and keep those things going in this game here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rutgers had 3 sacks in the game against Temple at home for Rutgers in New Jersey. Had 3 sacks in the game, 10 tackles for a loss. But here's the stat that I always say, to me, is, I don't know if I've ever said it on the show, but looking at Rutgers, they had 49 total tackles on defense, and Temple had 75, and you're like, oh, their defense was better. No, their defense was out there longer.
Exactly.
They had to make 75 tackles, and even with the 75 that they made, they still missed a ton, obviously, when Rutgers is scoring 61. So just being on the field longer, they're gonna get after it. Greg Schiano likes to harass. God forbid Syracuse takes a knee at the end of the game. He'll be bum rushing to injure your team like he did with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we know Schiano is physical. We also know that man must have fallen in a mud puddle because he's dirty. And so, but it's he's definitely going to bring the physicality, like you said. I find it interesting that none of their running backs really looked great running the ball. Their quarterback was their best rusher. The team had 220 rushing yards cumulatively, but you're looking at no other quarterback had 71 yards on the ground, and then you're looking at 35, 35, 28, 26, 19, 14, and a couple guys got a little bit of nothing out there and actually had negative yardage. So it's just that's interesting to me that none of their running backs looked great. Their best rusher was their quarterback, and at the end of the day, their overall numbers of 6 rushing touchdowns and 220 yards looks good, but individually they didn't have anybody having like a Sean Tucker day.
Yeah, and that was the case of the defense, again, like we just said, taking care of the ball and give them a short field. Some of those guys, like one guy had 6 yards, but he had a touchdown. So, but actually his long was 11. But, they didn't have to move the ball as much, but the defense either scored or got them the ball in the short field. And, that aggressive style defense will do that, give that team a short field. And, like you were saying, keeping Temple defense out there longer. They're turning the ball over. So,
yeah.
Now those guys on Temple side are huffing and puffing. So, that's definitely a bad recipe to lose a game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm happy. If I'm Johnny Langan and I got 5 carries for 19 yards, but I got 2 touchdowns.
You're right.
You know what I mean? So you're looking at 4 different players scored on the ground for Rutgers in the game. Langan had 2 touchdowns. Young had 1. And then Manangai had 2. And then Isaiah had 1. So you got 6 touchdowns scored amongst 4 different players. So obviously they spread the ball out here, which is something for Syracuse to watch because last year, Liberty, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, Duke, they all were watching the same film. I mean, when North Carolina came out, first half, Sam Howell didn't look like a Heisman hopeful quarterback. And second half, they handed it off to Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, who are both now in the NFL. And Javonte Williams had, I believe, 3 touchdowns in the game. And they just kept feeding him after it didn't work, passing and whatnot. And then Pittsburgh, we know they run the ball. And then they go into the game against Liberty, and Liberty ran all over them. Duke comes in 0-4 on the season. And I said Syracuse would probably give them the first win, and they did. And Duke ran the ball.
Yeah. I mean, that's football. You put it on film, and until you adjust to it, teams are going to copycat, and that's just how the game is played. But, and you can't afford to keep your guys out there. And that was the bad side of Syracuse offense, too many 3-and-outs. Yeah. Look what happened to Temple. So we can't afford to have that tomorrow. You know, we definitely got to get off the field when we can. And the offense is, just got sustained drive. Make third down conversions and keep, give those defensive guys their well-deserved rest on the sideline. And because, they both feed off each other. When the offensive scores, that just gives the defense more hype and come out there and play more and, vice versa.
Yeah, and going back to the last game, now Rutgers, as Isaac said, Rutgers has won the last 2 in a row, despite Syracuse having a lopsided overall better total there in the win-loss column over Rutgers. Rutgers winning the last 2. The last time these teams faced each other was back in 2012, almost a decade ago, is when they were on the field in Piscataway, New Jersey on October 13th of 2012 in front of 48,011 people with a kickoff time at 12:09 p.m. The game was a little over 3 hours. It was 49 degrees outside. The wind was only 1 mile an hour, and it was sunny. And we saw Juwan Jameson score the first points for Rutgers, a touchdown on the run. My dude, my guy, who looks in the face like one of my favorite rappers of all time. I think he looks like Mason Betha. Adonis Amin Moore tied the game, and my other dude, Ross Krautman, was able to make that extra point, tied it up 7-7. Then Duron Harmon had a 75-yard blocked field goal return, and so that gave Rutgers a nice defensive touchdown. And then you see Rutgers had a field goal to make it 17-7. And then Tyler Croft, who in the NFL after that, he gets a 12-yard pass from Gary Nova in 23-7. And then Syracuse trying to come back. My other guys, Ryan Nassib and Chris Clark, who was just on the show here within the last couple months and actually had a very successful surgery on his heart. God bless him.
Good deal.
So good for that. And much love to you and your loved ones, Chris, and to all the doctors and everybody that helped you out. They try to make it interesting with 4:19 to go, 23-15. Syracuse loses by 8 on the road in Piscataway. And, so I mean, that's so Rutgers got the last one almost a decade ago, and that was in Piscataway, New Jersey. This one is in the Loud House of the Dome, but it's only the Loud House if you make it as such.
Mm-hmm. But I like with that little breakdown, what you said, showed a block field goal is in. That's what they do. They block either punts or field goals, and that quick change right there, they took it back 75 yards for a touchdown. So just got to be careful. You know what you're getting into, and play up to that level. So yeah, definitely be ready to come out and cheer these guys on and support.
And if you want to date yourself and make yourself sad like Rob Carpenter, Rob Drummond, and Duke Pettijohn and I were in our show at the Wildcat Sports Pub with the Syracuse alumni, the last time Syracuse played Rutgers, the Big East football conference existed.
Yeah.
So just shed it, drop it. If you're like me, I like to put my Big East tears all in the same bottle, and then I just keep them for later. So I like to just put them all together here. So it's sad. Almost a decade ago, the Big East dissolved, and Rutgers and Syracuse were conference opponents the last time they played.
Right. And life moves on, Conference realignments is happening constantly, so it's almost like the transfer portal.
Yeah. It's like teams just kind of peeking in there going, what's going on? You know what I mean? So, and just remember, the grass isn't always greener. And when the musical chairs stop, as coaches have talked about, there's not spots for everybody. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of that, we're not, we'll get into things this week as we go, but we find out going into this Rutgers-Syracuse game that, Rutgers left the Big East before Syracuse and went to the Big Ten. Maryland joined them from the ACC. Then Syracuse came into the ACC with Pittsburgh. Louisville came in shortly after them. Before Syracuse and Louisville and Pittsburgh went into the ACC for football, and then Notre Dame for everything but football, we saw Virginia Tech, Boston College, and Miami jump the Big East. And I still remember going into the Dome and seeing they had the team on the border, they had painted the team's flags, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And there was a Boston College, a Virginia Tech, and a Miami flag that were on there inside of the Dome because they had before they had the ribbon boards, they had actually physically right there that you could touch. They
Right.
had the names of the teams in the Big East, so which used to be 15, and now the ACC has 15. So when it comes to most sports, including basketball, and 14 outside of Notre Dame for football. So I mean, going back to that time and seeing that and how strange it is and the realignment that happened from there. And I remember being in Providence, Rhode Island, sitting in a room when Syracuse was leaving, Pittsburgh was leaving, and eventually Louisville was leaving. And I sat with Charlie Strong, and he was taking the job to go to Texas. And I just remember sitting there thinking to myself, don't take it. And I literally wanted to tell him 3 years from now they're going to fire you.
Mm-hmm.
And literally 3 years to the date, they fired him in Texas. And can't imagine how many coaches you're going to fire now that you're going to be 6-6 in the SEC. But seeing all of that realignment, which didn't, in my opinion, affect anybody more than the American, because the Big East was left with UConn, which was the Big East, South Florida, which wasn't, Cincinnati, which wasn't, and Temple was coming back after they were pushed out a few years back. So you had four schools. Mike Oresco, the former Big East commissioner, could have crumbled, given up, laid dead, and let the four schools go somewhere else. He built a conference out of nothing, got it up to 13, and then lost UConn. And now we find out in realignment, Central Florida, Houston, and Cincinnati are leaving the American, which is getting poached again right before its decade anniversary.
Right.
And BYU is going from independent, and they're all going to the Big 12. And the American will now have 8, when the Big 12 just found out that they had 8. So the Big 12 will actually have 12 now, so they'll fit their name. What's your thoughts on the new world of realignment that sees the SEC with 16 with Oklahoma and Texas, and then the American losing Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF to the Big 12, and then BYU going from independent to Big 12, which Navy a few years ago made the jump to the American almost a decade ago from independent for over 100 years, and now BYU is going to make the jump.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like big fish swallowing up little fish, or somebody's trying to find, or there's a sinking ship, and now everybody's trying to find a place to land, and it's kind of sad. I mean, I see why Texas and Oklahoma want to move to the SEC because of maybe conference notoriety, but I don't see how that solves their problem of beating Alabama, Auburn, LSU, or Georgia, even to get to the playoff game. Now, if they change the playoff format, as we was talking earlier, I think that might, give them second thoughts on that, because why not stay in the Big 12? I can win the Big 12 if it was an 18-team playoffs, 18. But I don't know. We'll see. But everybody's moving around. It's just like you say, we're talking about rivalries in the old Big East. It's just now teams. Look at West Virginia. West Virginia is traveling to the Big 12 to play teams way out of their region. It doesn't even fit right for those guys. So, I mean, I don't see how it fits for some of these teams that are forced to find a place to survive and kind of keep some kind of reputation going, but we'll see how it shakes out in the end, because right now the elites are still the ones that are getting picked to be in the playoffs, no matter where they're coming from. So, well,
and the thing is, why, if you're Oklahoma, why leave the Big 12 for the SEC when you, outside of Clemson and Alabama, are the team that's advanced to the college football playoff the most?
Right.
Of all the year to 2015 and now, the teams that have gone to the college football playoff more than any other teams are Alabama, Clemson, and Oklahoma.
Right, yeah. And again, that shows you if you stayed in your area, you had a better opportunity, because, like I said, I don't see them fighting through a SEC schedule unless they revamp the SEC into smaller pods. And
like we talked about, Oklahoma and Texas will be like, we're going to play in the North Division.
Right.
And they're going to be like, well, there's only an East and West. They'll be like, no. We'll play each other now.
Right.
We'll be the mini Big 12 inside of your world. But, I mean, because you think about it, I think if Oklahoma plays Alabama in conference, they could lose 46-0.
Right. And when you take a beating like that, there's no way you're going to recover from that in the voters' eyes to get back into the playoff chance. only the special schools, maybe like an Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, other worlds now, can take a loss and still have that potential to get back in the playoffs.
There's a rule I said over the last year or so that, going off of what you said, I second it, that if you're Alabama or you're Clemson or maybe in Oklahoma, you can lose one game.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one team in the country in Division I AFBS football that can lose 2 games and make it to the college football playoff. That's Alabama.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the only team that can lose 2, and somebody will argue them in. Clemson can't lose again this year. And, Clemson's the closest to it, and they can only have 1 loss.
Right.
They're going to have to run the table. They're going to have to go 12-1, go 11-0 the rest of the season, and then win the ACC championship.
And maybe sometime in that theory, like you said, I've seen in the playoffs where the SEC as a conference can have an undefeated and maybe have a 1-loss team that's getting talked into the playoffs sometimes. It hasn't happened yet. I think Georgia, maybe Alabama might have made it. I'm not too sure. But
yeah, because they played each other.
Right.
That was the year that Auburn beat them both, and somehow Auburn was left out, and Alabama and Georgia were left in, and Alabama and Georgia played each other in the championship game, and Auburn, who had defeated them both, lost to UCF.
Right. So there you go. Maybe that's what Texas and Oklahoma's thinking. Maybe if I'm a 1-loss SEC team,
yeah,
the conference are still by the strength.
But you ain't going to have 1 loss.
No, exactly.
I'm sorry, Texas, you're the new Arkansas.
Yeah, exactly.
Oklahoma's got a fighting chance since they can score 50, but Texas, you haven't had a coaching identity. You change every few years. Texas is not in a place where they coach. They're not in a place with a scheme. They're not in a place. Really, Texas is they've kind of lost their identity.
Right.
And trying to find it in the middle of a 16-team conference that's led by Alabama. Put it this way. When you're hired as a coach at one of the 13 schools not named Alabama in the SEC, your job is to beat Alabama, go to the SEC championship, and win. Since that almost never happens, coaches like Les Miles got fired for going 0-3 in the middle of a season despite having an 81% winning percentage at the school. He got fired for losing 3 games in a row. So, as I will say to Jimbo Fisher, if you stayed in Florida State, you could have been there till you died. They would have put statues up of you, put your name on the fields. They would have given you eventually more money than the SEC would. So I always say this to coaches. Do you want to take an inordinate amount of money over 3 seasons and get fired, or eventually make more than that money over time and stay in a place that's going to appreciate you more? Because at Texas A&M, they had 1 loss last year. At Texas A&M, they were only behind Alabama. But you're in Alabama's division, which means you're not going to the SEC championship. And I thought Texas A&M had an argument of getting into the college football playoff, but they didn't let them in. People don't even know what Texas A&M did last year with Jimbo Fisher only being there for a couple seasons. They don't even know his record and the success he had because he's behind Nick Saban.
Exactly.
Like, you think you have a 1-loss season in the SEC and people still don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What does that say about who you can be unless you beat Alabama? So every coach is fireable every single year inside of the SEC. And I don't know. If my task was to come into the SEC, beat Alabama, and win an SEC championship, I would just never buy a house knowing that in 3 to 4 years I'm going to get fired.
Exactly. Because it's almost impossible. Why even put yourself in that situation? He had a golden opportunity, like you said, at Florida State. It was no reason. It was between him and Dabo, and he had the upper hand for a little while over Dabo. So, like you say, the grass is not always green on the other side. So,
No, and we have Greg, a longtime listener and supporter of the show, weighing in here, Notre Dame. And I was going to get to this, and I thought maybe I'd stay off of them. But you know what? I always push that hot button when it comes to Notre Dame, and the fact that they have a mysterious cloak of invincibility, Greg said. He said they take losses and for some reason are always ranked and pushed up the rankings. I call that the Rudy factor.
Mm-hmm.
People say, well, why is Notre Dame in 2021 a top 10 team? I love the movie Rudy, and they were good in 1971.
Right.
I thought the rankings were about what you do on the field, but as I said over the years, that the AP and the coaches poll and the college football playoff poll are all BS because these rankings are not based on this year. They're based on history and nostalgia and who has boosters and who padded this pocket and who did this and who did that and what about that. It's never all about this year. They proved me right in such a disgustingly horrible way when they ranked the Big Ten teams 3 weeks before they played. They put Ohio State as a top 6. They let Michigan, as I said earlier in the show, go up 3 spots at 0-0. UCF won, Michigan didn't play. UCF stayed, and Michigan went up 3 spots.
Right, and they made an exemption when they didn't meet their own conference rules of how many games they had to play last year.
Yeah, with Ohio State.
Exactly. So.
Ohio State didn't play enough games to play in the Big Ten championship, so then the Big Ten changed the championship rules. And then in the college football playoff, when Ohio State advanced to the college football playoff, the committee made sure that the game wasn't played until everyone from Ohio State was off the COVID list.
Exactly.
So I mean, we thought that that's what it was. And during the pandemic, as a lot of people showed their true colors, because when you're locked in a house with people that you may not have wanted to marry, you probably, if you both came out, you probably ain't married no more. So I could say if my ex-wife was in this house, one of us gonna make it, and your boy's a survivor. So, not that murder's good, and not that I would have done that. She just being a 10 outside.
Just saying.
You know? Just saying. She could have the People's Republic of her place on my property. And then I would call the cops and be like, there's somebody on my property claiming that they have a republic. But, you know, it's just consider like she would have an exit off my highway. But the reality of it all is that we thought that these disgusting backward rules were true. And this past year, due to the rankings ranking teams that had not played, moving teams up that hadn't played, giving all this love to Notre Dame, and building this disgusting precedent that if they go 12-0, no matter what their season is, and no matter who they play, and no matter what it looks like or who's ranked, that as long as Notre Dame goes 12-0, they're going to be in the conversation.
Right.
Because that year, they beat like 2 good teams. They blew out Syracuse without Dungy at home. They blew out Florida State, who was trash that year. They barely beat Vanderbilt. They barely beat Ball State. They did nothing to even be ranked in the top 25, and they went to the college football playoff, and they got blasted.
Right. It's just one of those teams, like you say, that nostalgia that somebody's on that committee always want to push and guide those guys up the hill to get them. Let me get them close in the top 10, because somebody's, I see these 2 SEC teams got to play each other, so that's my opportunity to leapfrog them into this part of the conversation. But and it never fails. They lose to somebody and either fall out of the position. So, but they do get the benefit. I agree to that and whatnot. So yeah, it's just like you say, disgusting to see that.
And shout out to Coastal Carolina as we're having this pregame show, who's taken down Kansas, and not only taking down Big 12's Kansas, beat them 49-22, a Sun Belt Conference team doing this. Now, normally you'd see a game like this, and it'd be 23-22.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Coastal Carolina is spanking Kansas, and by the way, fantastic men's basketball school, but in football, boy, they make Syracuse look good. Thanks, Kansas.
And it's the only ranked undefeated team in the state of South Carolina.
How about that? Ruh-roh. What's up, South Carolina? How you doing? And Duke resurrected themselves after losing to Charlotte in non-conference play. They defeated North Carolina A&T 45-17.
Oh, no.
Gunnar Holmberg with 270 yards passing. So before we hop out of here, we'll give our Rutgers at Syracuse prediction inside of our show here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, as we're hanging out here with you in a bonus Wake Up Call show on Facebook.com/WakeUpCallDT, as well as on YouTube.com/WakeUpCallDT. Normal hours for Wake Up Call, Monday through Friday. Set that dial, and don't forget it, every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, with plenty of places to watch and listen. Once the shows go live, they'll jump into the archives on Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, MixLR, TuneIn, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. YouTube as well. All you have to do is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora to find us there. So, Isaac and I are going to pick a few games here, and we're going to give our predictions. Isaac, you are sitting in here co-hosting with me, and my name is on the door. So I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to say to my co-host, Mr. Isaac Alford, you pick the games we predict. So what games are you circling? And I don't know what he's going to pick, so I have to literally predict in the moment.
Okay, let's go with Oregon, Ohio State.
No. Just kidding. So I am not a fan of the Pac-12. I shouldn't say I'm not a fan of them. They don't impress me.
Right.
So when they win on the West Coast, I'm like, I still like when they win on the West Coast, I feel like it's like a different world. I'm like, well, we're playing football on the East Coast, and you guys are in like it's almost like the multiverse of Marvel, where in that other universe, the Pac-12 is playing their games on the West Coast, but over here we're playing other football, and so I don't buy into them as heavily as other people. I don't know why Oregon's ranked 12. I know growing up they were better. And it's not that I don't want to see someone advance from the Pac-12, but if anybody of the Power 5 needs the conference or the college football playoff to expand, it's the Pac-12 because they're almost never included.
How do you think former BC quarterback Anthony Brown is doing so far for that Oregon program?
I love Anthony Brown.
Yeah.
You know, and that's this. See, Isaac got to my heart. So Isaac's like, from everything Dan's saying, I know that he doesn't want to talk about Oregon that much, but then I'm going to throw in Anthony Brown from BC, who I covered in his recruiting. He went 15 to 24. He had a touchdown, 172 yards. Also had a touchdown on the ground, 3.5 yards a carry, 16 carries for 56 as they beat Fresno State. So, you know what I don't get is I know he got hurt and stuff, but I don't get how Anthony Brown wasn't the starter.
Right.
You know what I mean? I felt like it wasn't clear sometimes that I'm like, how is he not the guy?
Right.
So now that you pulled at my heartstrings, now I feel some kind of way. I'm still going to pick Ohio State because Ohio State's at home.
Right.
And so I'm going to give them the slight edge. But, now you got me all... I guess the only way to my... The West Coast only way to my heart is to take an East Coast player and have him transfer there.
As you were saying that, I was thinking that.
Yeah. Isaac's hearing no. Anthony Brown. Oh, man. That's like telling me Jennifer Aniston's in a movie with somebody I don't like.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, put it to you like this. It's like Jennifer Aniston is in Syracuse doing a piece... How do I say this in a nice way?
Be careful.
It's if Jennifer Aniston was at a coffee shop with my ex-girlfriend, who I know is crazy. I'm still going to the coffee shop to see Jennifer Aniston.
Okay.
I know I'm going to see her, but I'm still going to be like, yo, Jennifer, what's up? And I'm going to mack it to her right in front of my ex, because who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to.
Jennifer Aniston has been my crush forever. Who are you picking?
I'm definitely going with the home team,
Okay.
Ohio State. I do see another one that I know is kind of near and dear to your heart because you probably your second home, as you told me.
Mm-hmm.
Florida, South Florida. Is that any more juice to that game? I think South Florida gave them a run a couple years back here.
Well, here's the thing: is South Florida. So allegedly, Central Florida, UCF was given under the former AD at UCF, Danny White, was allegedly given an offer from the Gators for a 2-1.
Okay.
And allegedly Danny said no. And then the new AD at UCF said yes to Florida for a 2-1 now. But in the meantime, South Florida was like, oh, we'll take it.
Right.
And South Florida lucked out because they have a 2-1 where they play one game in Tampa and two in Gainesville. But the first one is in Tampa and the next two are in Gainesville. So even though Florida is the bigger team, they have to go on the road first, which is kind of unique.
Right.
And what I love about this is South Florida plays at Raymond James Stadium, where I've been a bunch of times, in my coverage of the Bucks for training camp and for their regular season. So Florida Gators have to go to Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. Who's the backup quarterback to Tom Brady? Kyle Trask. Where did he play? Florida. Mm-hmm. So Kyle Trask gets to see his team come to town, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And, with all of that being said in the background, South Florida is no threat to Florida. So I think this will be like 40-something to maybe nothing or maybe 7.
Okay, yeah, I agree, yeah. I think Florida, it's too much for them. Do we get one more?
You can pick a couple, whatever you want.
Okay, I see another interesting one. Can Virginia Tech keep it going and beat Middle Tennessee?
So
do they still have that aggressive style defense?
Well, so that's the thing is Middle Tennessee is with Shafe, there's all harassment. Shafe's got a defense like that bee trying to get my mouth today.
Right.
So I think this game, which is at the same time the Syracuse game is at. So when Isaac and I are sitting in the press box in the Dome, by the grace of God and hard work, always work hard, kids, and believe in your dreams, and believe in God, faith of a mustard seed. I think I'm going to go one of us is going to go like this to the TV, and I'm telling you, the game's going to be closer than you think.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to come down to a field goal. I think one of us is going to tap each other and laugh about the fact that we talked about this the night before. And I think Virginia Tech is going to squeak it out, but I think barely.
Right. Yeah, I can see that too with the style that Shafe loves to play, bring pressure.
Remember, Virginia Tech gave Liberty their second ACC win after Syracuse gave them their first last
year. Right.
And at home.
Right.
In Blacksburg,
So yeah, definitely. That when I saw that, that would make me think about the defensive style that they play. So it's definitely going to be interesting to follow that one.
I'm going to give you a game that fans are going to hate more than, and I'm not saying anything bad about this. I'm just saying it's really hard to get it online. If fans are going to hate anything more than the CBS Sports Network, it's the fact that Notre Dame's game is on the Peacock channel.
Oh, Jesus.
So, that's like ESPN ate the Ocho. But because Peacock is it's the streaming NBC service, but it's not necessarily NBC. They're playing Toledo, so I just wanted to mention it. Mm-hmm. Here's one. Is Georgia potentially feeling themselves too much at number 2 in the nation, beating Clemson, knowing that UAB, who had their team canceled a couple of years ago, and then came back right after when they found out that the response was horrible at them canceling their football program. UAB has nothing to lose. Do they put on the road and make this game interesting against Georgia?
With Georgia defense, slim to none.
Okay.
Yeah, Georgia defense with what they showed against a Clemson team, I think that's what's going to lead Georgia maybe deep into their conference, but they definitely got work on offense. They do. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go with Georgia as well, and I'm gonna tell you that that this team's gonna need some Lamborghini mercy when Mercer takes on Alabama. Alabama playing their second to last game of the season in the second week of the season. Why are they playing the cupcakes now? If Alabama's eating cupcakes now, they're gonna be fat by Christmas.
Right.
So so another one I want to ask here: Miami, Appalachian State. Appalachian State is no joke.
Yeah, I definitely was going to. I saw that one, and I was going to say that one. Yeah, Appalachian State has been a great program. Satterfield had them up there. They gave Miami a run for their money a couple of years back, and you definitely got to take those guys serious. They don't, like you said, they have nothing to lose, and they have some athletes that believe in themselves. So definitely, we're going to see if Miami can bounce back after that. That game against Bama. So, hopefully they're not still licking their wounds, because if you go sleep on that team, they definitely can put an upset on you.
What do you think?
As long as with King as the quarterback leading that Miami team, I think Miami will pull it out, though.
I'm going to go with Appalachian State.
You're going to go
And I loved Eric King. I had it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with Appalachian State.
Gotcha.
It's week 2. They're looking to shake it up.
Right.
And thank goodness LSU, after getting bounced from the rankings and having UCLA jump in their grave, they got McNeese at home in the upcoming game. But how about this game? This team last week lost to Montana Washington at Michigan. Does Washington come into Michigan angry as a grizzly bear that just beat them, the Montana Grizzlies?
Mm-hmm.
Do they put on something on Michigan being so embarrassed last week, or does Michigan take advantage of the embarrassment?
This is a good one. I think Washington may come in here and put it on Michigan from the embarrassment.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they, like you said, they was feeling themselves in the first game, and lo and behold, guess what happens when you take another team for granted? And, Michigan losing their star wide receiver,
That's true.
It could be interesting, So I give Washington this one,
All right. I'm going to stay with Michigan, but Lord knows that when I pick Jim Harbaugh, it makes me sick in my tummy. So it's tough. Jacksonville State almost had Florida State last year in this exact game early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the only game that Florida State could play non-conference because the ACC was only allowed one during COVID. So they played last year literally this same game at Florida State. Does Jacksonville State have any shot?
No, I think Florida State, even though they lost, I think from what I saw from them against Notre Dame, they even though it was a loss, they can walk away from that game with their heads held up high. And I don't think they're gonna sleep on Jacksonville State.
So Isaac and I, for our predictions, just to let y'all know once again as we go down the line here. So we'll go back to the first one that we had. So that was before Florida. It was Oregon, Ohio State.
Yep.
So if we go back to that prediction for you, Isaac and I. So Oregon at OHIO. Ohio State. We both went Ohio State. And then Florida at South Florida. Mm-hmm. It doesn't want to be called UCF anymore. They want to be called South Florida. So Florida at South Florida, we both took Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had
Middle Tennessee.
And Middle Tennessee,
and
we
Virginia
had
Tech.
Them going up against Virginia Tech. And so Middle Tennessee at Virginia Tech, we both went VT, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, our games that we chose outside of that, the UAB Georgia, we both went with Georgia.
Yeah.
So UAB Georgia, both Georgia, and then how about this one? The rivalry renewed. Iowa State playing each other early.
Right.
4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, both ranked in the nation's top 10. Iowa 10, Iowa State 9. Contrary to public belief, they're not in the same conference. Iowa's in the Big 10 and Iowa State's in the Big 12 for now. So what are your thoughts on both teams being ranked in the top 10 and playing each other? And I feel like this is early for rivalry week. I would like to see this game like the end of the season.
Exactly, yeah. You would think this game would be at the end of the season. But Iowa State, a lot of people are talking about, that style of defense that they play. And then you got Iowa's always been a hard-nosed team, that concept, hard-nosed. But they always that team that is gritty and physical from the Big Ten. So I think Iowa's going to pull this one off. Just the physicality that you always get from that team and stuff, so it'll be interesting to see how well Iowa State can handle them.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Iowa as well. I just would, I go Big 10 over the Big 12, so I'm going to go and lean on them for this one. And any final game here besides that before we jump into Rutgers at Syracuse, and we saw Washington and Michigan.
Stanford, USC.
Stanford, USC, okay. So let's do Stanford, USC, and then I do want to make a note here. We both said Washington. Washington. That one we were different here.
Right.
So Washington at Michigan. You have Washington, and I reluctantly took Michigan, and then we both took FSU over Jacksonville State. So Isaac, once again here for those of you on the live feed on Facebook.com/WakeUpCallDT. And on Facebook.com being shared, Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, and on YouTube.com /WakeUpCallDT, given our predictions. We only have gone different on a couple of these.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to go to this last one here before Rutgers at Syracuse. And I'll let you take it. Stanford at USC. What do you have?
I'm going to go upset on this. I'm going to go Stanford. How about that one?
Okay.
Just to play up a little bit.
Stanford at USC playing in conference early here. So Isaac is going to go Stanford. And you know what? I don't trust USC in this game. I don't.
I mean, that's right.
I know, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I think USC ranked in the past, like when Stanford was, or when USC was ranked back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Pete Carroll, USC.
Yeah, like Reggie Bush and all
right.
that. Then I was like, they're scary.
Right.
When they're ranked now, I go, rankings. And so they don't scare me anymore. So I'm going to pick Stanford, even though they're called the Stanford Cardinal and their logo is a tree. Like, you can't confuse the world any more than having eyes and a mouth on a tree that's called a cardinal. Not the Cardinals, the Cardinal,
right.
And they're dressed up like a Christmas tree. So, congratulations on that. Rutgers at Syracuse, the final game as we were doing the pregame show here. What's your thoughts?
I'm going SU at home, and I'll throw out a score in there. 24-17.
Oh, you going low.
Yeah, I think it's two physical teams. Rutgers, they had, as you want to call it, their cupcake. I think Syracuse defensively, what they shown last year, and those guys getting that experience on the field, they definitely going to probably be, hopefully, a tough task to score against. And vice versa. Rutgers, a very physical team, very attacking on special teams. So,
yeah,
I think it might be a low-scoring game,
Fair enough. You're going with Syracuse 24-17. I'm going with Syracuse 30-24.
Okay.
And we'll both be in the dome looking at each other when that score is getting close. We'll be like, yo, Isaac, I bet you that sandwich is not going to be there for either one of us. So, I'm about to sneak in some Chick-fil-A myself. So, with that being said, Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. Find Cafe Kubal at 3501 James Street, as well as 401 South Salina Street, 208 North Townsend Street in Syracuse. Downtown Syracuse, right by the Dome, inside of Galasanos Children's Hospital, 343 Fayette Street, Manlius, and at their newest location, the drive-through location at the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road in North Syracuse, where I will be in the morning on game day with Lemoyne's College Dolphins women's basketball head coach Mary Grimes. Coming back, she was an assistant under Gina Castelli, who you know is here every other week with Sports Ends in a Vowel. And so I will be with Mary Grimes in the morning with some coffee and tea early at the regular 9 o'clock hour. So I did the show today, then went to the Wildcat and did a show with the Syracuse alumni, then stayed up late with you almost to midnight, and I'll see you at my normal time at 9 o'clock for another bonus show, and then I'll be at the Dome, and at some point I'll go to Beacon Skiff and get myself some cider donuts. So in the meantime, thank you to Isaac Alford. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to, more than anything, God. And we appreciate you all. So Facebook, find us on the social medias at Wake Up Call DT on Facebook, at Call DT on the Twitter, and at Wake Up Call _DT on Instagram, and of course wakeupcalldt.com. You know where to go to find the archives on Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all the good stuff. iHeartRadio by searching Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora or Wake Up Call DT. And thank you to all of our Central and Upstate New York partners, Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, Wildcat Sports Pub, Avicoli's, Victory Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Millhouse Market, Honda City of Liverpool, Pizza Man, Mother's Cupboard, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, PB&J's Lunchbox, Progressive Dental, Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, and of course your Lemoyne College Dolphins with our multimedia marketing partnership, bringing you Dolphin Time every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on Wake Up Call every other week. AD and DT switching places with the Dolphin Dive, and every Wednesday giving you Lemoyne College Dolphins. So AD and DT the first and third Wednesday, the second and fourth the Dolphin Dive. Fins up, per always. So we'll talk with you soon, and as always, as I say here on the show, God bless. No stress. Do your best. Please be good to each other and be safe out there, folks. We'll talk with you very, very soon.